Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Again, good afternoon. My name is Michael Fedorko. I am currently the department head for the Department of Public Safety in Atlantic County. I'm also a Marine, Semper Fi. The county executive is unable to be with us today. This is the first time he has ever missed this important ceremony, and due to a recent back procedure and COVID exposure. He sends his best wishes to all. I would now like to acknowledge our VIPs and elected official, County Surrogate Jim Curcio, former County Executive Dick Squires, Commissioner Chairwoman Maureen Kern, Vice Chair John Risley, Commissioner Frank Ballas, Veteran Service Officer Bob Frollo, and Veterans Advisory Board Chair Herb Davis. I'd also like to introduce Commissioner Andrew Parker from the Board of Commissioners of Atlantic County. Oh yeah, Don Guardian also from the Assembly. Don, former Mayor of Atlantic City. Brigadier General Douglas R. Satterfield, U.S. Army retired. Douglas Satterfield is a graduate of Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, and the Army War College. He entered the United States Army on active duty as a private. General, that's about the only thing you and I have in common in our military careers. I never got hired as Lance Corporal. 7 years later, he completed his enlisted service as an infantry sergeant. His last duty position was Corps of Engineer Commanding Officer of Engineer Command. He was responsible for over 12,000 soldiers. Additionally, he also served with the 8th U.S. Field Army Wartime Engineer in South Korea. Following 9/11, General Satterfield was deployed to combat on 3 different one-year tours as a combat engineer and served as one of the senior staff officers with the 1st Cavalry Division, 3 Corps, Headquarters United States Forces Iraq. He commanded units with duty in 22 foreign nations during his 40-year military career. Satterfield currently lives in Galloway with his wife Nancy, with whom he raised 4 children. He is a member of the Atlantic County Veterans Advisory Board and is actively involved with the local Boy Scout troop. He is president of the Four Seasons Veteran Club and has written 2 books on leadership since his retirement. Ladies and gentlemen, Brigadier General Douglas R. Satterfield.
Wow. My mother would certainly be proud of that. By the way, it was Bob Frollo's the one who asked me to be here. Where is he? Bob? By the way, Bob, I told my mom about you. Yeah, she says you must be one awesome dude. And she's right. She's 92, so she's always right. Good afternoon on a day that is right prior to some rain, so that's good. So we won't take this too long. A very special day, we have to admit, obviously. A day that brings out all the patriots from southern Jersey. I like that very much. I would have worn my uniform today, but alas, having retired 8 years ago, it must have shrunk. So wearing it's out of the question, but I did wear my 1st Cavalry Stetson. It fits, it still fits. Proof that even in retirement, I did not grow a fat head. So, by the way, I asked Bob how long this speech should be. And he says, hey, look, Doug, I probably won't remember what you said next week. Just keep it short. No pressure. No pressure. And so in keeping with Bob's guidance, and I will keep it short, I hope also to make it memorable for you as well. I would like to recognize a few folks, some of which are not here, and I will skip some people inadvertently. My apologies. Obviously, Congressman Van Drew, who's a real leader making things happen in this part of the state, and that's real great. He's also working, I think, against a lot of the stupidity coming out of Washington. Wait a minute. I have a sticky note. My wife must have put this in here. Don't say that last part out loud. Oh, anyway. Is Chris Chin here? Usually when Van Drew's not, Chris is there. Our county commissioners, thank you very much. And especially Frank in the back, he's our veteran liaison. Thanks, Frank. He tolerates the folks that we have meetings with once a month. It's too bad about Denny. He can't be here. I understand he's had some trouble with his back. We know how that works. A number of council members and mayors, thanks for being here. The Sheriff's Color Guard, which, are they the one out there? Yep. And the Corrections Officers Honors Guard, the New Jersey State Police, some great folks here. The Atlantic City Fire Department, Sandpiper Pipes and Drums, great. Herb Davis, President of the Veterans Advisory Board, thanks. A lot of other folks from the board as well. You probably remember a couple years ago, Mark Lobin was standing right at this podium. The difference is he can still wear his uniform. Of course, our first responders, and you, the great patriots that know the real meaning of Memorial Day. And last, on behalf of my wife and I, we would like to recognize those men and women from our armed forces who cannot be here today, who have seen their last sunset. We will remember you. I will introduce my wife, Nunziata Spallino. I'm not Italian, okay, in case you didn't notice.
Actually,
Okay.
I'm Sicilian, then I'm
Then she's Italian, okay. I'm still learning, that's why. She has pasta, she's very good at that. Thanks for having me here today. One of the most dangerous places on the planet during the Iraq War was in a city called Ramadi. You may have heard of it. The largest and the deadliest battles of the war were actually fought there. On the 22nd of April 2008, two U.S. Marine battalions, the 1st of the 9th, nicknamed the Walking Dead, and the 2nd of the 8th, were switching out in Ramadi. One battalion going home very soon, closing out their deployment, the other just beginning their 7-month combat tour. Two Marines, Corporal Jonathan Yale and Corporal Jordan Harder, 22 and 20 years of age respectively, one from each battalion, were assuming the watch together at the entrance of a gate in a makeshift outpost housing 50 U.S. Marines. That same broken down, ramshackle building they were located in was also home to 100 Iraqi police. They were our allies in the fight against the terrorists in Ramadi until recently the city had been owned by Al-Qaeda. Yale was a dirt poor kid from Virginia who was married. He was with his wife, his daughter, and also his sister and mother lived with him, and he supported them as well. He did this on a salary of less than $23,000 a year. And Harder, who was a popular, fun-loving, middle-class kid from Long Island, New York, not that far from where we are today, or what this story is about today. They were from two completely different worlds. Had they not joined the U.S. Marines, who simplify, they would have never have met. And also, they would have never met because America exists in multiple locations throughout the world and depends upon your economic status, where you're born, what religion you are. You may not meet certain people. But these two Marines, combat Marines, were forged in the same crucible of Marine training. And because of this bond, they were brothers as close or closer than if they had been born of the same woman. Their mission orders they received that morning from the sergeant squad leader went something like this. And if you're a Marine, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, you two clowns, stand this post and let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. You clear? I'm sure Yale and Harder both said something like, yes, Sergeant, with just enough attitude that they really meant to say, no kidding, sweetheart, we know what we're doing. Then they relieved the two other Marines on watch at the time and took up their post at an entry control point at the security station Nasser in the Sofia section of Ramadi in the Anbar province of western Iraq. A few minutes later, a large blue truck turned down the alleyway, perhaps 60, 70 yards in length, and sped its way through the serpentine of concrete jersey barriers. That's what we use to slow people down. The truck stopped just short of where the two were posted and detonated, killing them both catastrophically. 24 brick masonry houses were destroyed or damaged. A mosque 100 yards away collapsed. The truck's engine came to rest in a house 200 yards away before it actually knocked down the majority of that home. Our explosive experts reckoned that the blast was made up of about 2,000 pounds of explosives. 2 died. And because these two young infantrymen didn't have it in their DNA to run away, they saved 150 of their Iraqi and American brothers in arms. Now, Marines dying or being seriously injured or wounded in combat is pretty common. We expect Marines, in the Army too, we expect Marines, regardless of their rank or their position, to stand their ground and do their duty even if dying is part of the process. But this one just seemed a little different to us. So the regimental commander, who had just returned, agreed with that assessment, but reported that there were no American witnesses to the event, just Iraqi police. If there was a chance of finding out what actually happened and Marines were to be properly decorated for their bravery, it would have to be done as a combat award. And the combat awards, you got to have 2 eyewitnesses, preferably Americans. We figured that the bureaucrats back in Washington wouldn't buy the Iraqi police statements. If it had any chance at all, it had to come under the signature of a general officer. So the following day, the Marine commander traveled out to Ramadi to speak individually to about half a dozen Iraqi police. All of them told the same story. The blue truck turned down the alley, immediately sped up, and it's made its way through the serpentine. They all said, we knew immediately what was going on as soon as the 2 Marines began firing. The Iraqi police then related that some of them also fired their weapons and then to a man ran for safety just prior to the explosion. All survived. Many were injured, some seriously. One of the Iraqis elaborated with tears welling up in his eyes. He said, why didn't they run like any normal man would to save his life? What he didn't know until then was that Marines are not normal. Choking past the motion, he said, sir, in the name of God, no sane man would have stood there and done what they did. No sane man at all. They saved every one of us. What we didn't know at the time, and only learned a couple of days later, after Yale and Harder had been submitted for the Navy, posthumous Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor, was that one of the security cameras damaged during the attack actually recorded some of the suicide attack. And it happened exactly as the Iraqi police described it. It took 6 seconds from the time the truck entered the alley until the time it detonated. I was able to watch what the camera saw later, a recording of the last 6 seconds of their young lives. So putting myself in their heads, I suppose it took them about a second for the Marines to come separately to the same conclusion about what was going on when the truck came into view at the far end of the alley. Exactly no time to talk it over or call the sergeant to ask what to do. Only enough time to take a half an instant and think about what the sergeant told them only a few minutes before. Let no unauthorized personnel or vehicles pass. The two Marines had about 5 seconds left to live. It took maybe another 2 seconds for them to present their weapons, take aim, and open up. By this time, the truck was halfway through the barriers and gaining speed the whole time. Here the recording shows a number of the Iraqi police, some of whom fired their AKs, now scattering like the normal and rational men they were, some running right past the Marines. They had 3 seconds left to live. For about 2 seconds more, the recording shows the Marines firing their weapons nonstop, the truck's windshield exploding and the shards of glass and the rounds taking it apart and tearing into the body of the son of a bitch trying to get past them to the Iraqis and Americans bedded down in the barracks behind them. Their lives depended entirely on two Marines standing their ground. But if they had been aware, they would have known they were safe, because two Marines stood between them and a crazed suicide bomber. The recording shows the truck careening to a stop immediately in front of the two Marines. In all of the instantaneous violence, Yale and Harder never hesitated. By all reports and by the recording, they never stepped back. They never even stepped aside. They never even shifted their weight. With their feet shoulder width apart, they leaned directly into the danger, firing as fast as they could work their weapons. They had only 1 second left to live. The truck explodes. The camera goes blank. Two young men go to God. 6 seconds. Not enough time to think about their families, their country, their flag, their lives or their deaths, but more than enough time for two very brave young men to do their duty into eternity. That is the people who are on watch all over the world today, for you and for me. This Memorial Day, we remember them and the more than 1 million men and women who've died in this U.S. military service. We benefit from those fallen Americans' sacrifices every time we exercise our constitutional rights. We can speak freely, possess our firearms, vote, and peaceably assemble. Public officials do not guarantee us those rights. It is paid for, rather, in the blood of those who are willingly risk their lives to protect us. As the saying goes, all gave some gave all. In closing, I'd like to say thank you for inviting my wife, Nancy, and I here today, and God bless America. Thank you.